Hi, welcome to Inconsistent Days, where every day in my shoes is completely different and inconsistent, pretty much. I am a 24-hour caregiver. I care for my granddad with dementia. I don't know how many other caregivers are out there that care for their loved ones with dementia or Alzheimer's. My hugs go out to you in my heart. If you haven't subscribed to a sponsor, not a sponsor group, but a support group, I would advise you to join a support group if you are a caregiver. Um, I joined a support group on Facebook, and it has helped me through this time so very much. Um, every day is so different, and I don't know if any of y'all know what dementia is. Dementia, your brain is dying. Alzheimer's, you have memory problems. When you have Alzheimer's, it's mostly just your memory that's failing. But when you have dementia, your brain is actually dying. So you're losing those parts of your brain that help you to think clearly. You no longer can think clearly because that part of your brain is dying. You can no longer comprehend things or reason to make good decisions because that part of your brain is dying. Um, for instance, one morning, um, before I usually get out of bed, I always get up and get myself dressed or whatever, go in there, get my granddad up at 9 o'clock in the morning so he can have his medicine. Well, one morning, I don't know, I think it was maybe 3 o'clock in the morning or something. I don't know exactly what time it was, but my granddad started hollering for me. And he usually doesn't holler for me in the middle of the night. He usually will sleep through the whole night. And he starts yelling, and I go in there to see what he wanted, and he wants a cigarette. But there was poop all over his hands, poop all over his bed, poop all over the sheets, and poop all over his legs and his feet. Poop was everywhere, but he wanted a cigarette. It's like he had no idea what he had just done or what he was doing. I keep a tissue box on his bedside table, and he had gotten into his tissue box and pulled out the tissues and used them as toilet paper, and then he sat that up there on his bedside table. I think he was just doing what always was just natural. You go to the bathroom and you clean up after yourself, but except for in his case, he is bedridden and he can't get out of bed, and I think instead of going in his britches and calling me in there to change him, he thought he was going to take care of it himself. But just within a short amount of time, he was needing a cigarette. Like, he had no idea. He had poop all over his hands and poop all over his bed. Poop everywhere. He had no clue that he was covered in poop. He just wanted a cigarette. That's dementia. Alzheimer's is, I know I had this item, but I can't find it, and I don't know what I did with it. Or, just forgetting things. Like, have you ever walked into the kitchen and then you forgot why you walked into the kitchen, why you're in there? That's kind of Alzheimer's. Dementia is you would go into the kitchen, pour you a glass of milk, spill that glass of milk, and somebody walks into the kitchen and you go and you sit down. It's like you completely forgot that you even fixed you a glass of milk, that you spilt the glass of milk. And say you spilt that glass of milk on your shirt, so now you're soaking wet. And then you just go sit down in the living room and start watching TV. Because your mind just completely shut down. You completely forgot that you had a glass of milk, you completely forgot that you spilt that glass of milk, and you had no idea that you spilt that glass of milk on your shirt that's soaking wet. That's dementia. And that's what a lot of us caregivers deal with on a day-to-day basis. Um, Caring for a loved one is a lot harder. It's like nobody really understands what dementia is, and not even our own family members understand really what dementia is. And I don't think anybody really understands dementia. Everybody relates it to Alzheimer's, and they think it's the same thing of Alzheimer's. And though they're very similar, they're not exactly the same. And yeah, it's very difficult to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's as well. Um, but I don't think anybody truly understands until you have actually taken care of somebody with these terrible diseases, dementia or Alzheimer's. And to have to care for your own loved one, your own mother, your own dad, your own grandma, or your aunt, or your own spouse that has this terrible disease. I don't think you understand anything of what a caregiver is really going through on a day-to-day basis. It's exhausting, and everybody's loved one is completely different, and everybody's situation is completely different. And so sometimes we tend to, we have to make decisions for our loved ones with what works for our loved one and what's best for them and what is best for the household, in our situation. And so you can't judge, each other. You can't judge if you have a loved one, if you have a family member that's taking care of somebody with dementia, and that's all you know, and you're never there, and you don't ever see what happens day to day, then it'd be very hard for you to even judge your family member that's taking care of the loved one with dementia on any things that they do on their daily routine. You can't judge them because you don't know. That's what's working for them, and they've tried everything else. And so when you've tried a million things and nothing seems to work, and then you finally find something that is actually working for you and keeping you sane and keeping your dementia loved one in check and helping them, because you're not ever doing anything to be hateful towards them or to be mean to them. But sometimes the caregivers that are caring for people with dementia have to make choices for their sanity as well as for the safety of the loved one with dementia. So for another family member to come in, and you're going over there to visit say it's your uncle or your dad, and you're just going over there to visit with them and to see them, and your dad has dementia, but every time you go over there to see them, they can talk to you and they can communicate with you, and they can remember you, and they can carry on a conversation with you like nothing is wrong with them. And then that's all you see. And then you hear them talk about something you disagree with, or you see a change has been made in the room, or a change has been made in your dementia loved one's life, and you don't agree with it if you're not there, and you're not the one taking care of them, and you don't see what goes on day to day. You have no clue. So please do not judge your family members who are caring for your other family members with dementia until you walked a day in the shoes of a caregiver. Don't judge. That's all I'm saying. Because it is very, very difficult. Like, for instance, I could say cigarette. We have a cigarette issue in this house with my granddad. I'm not a smoker. My husband's not a smoker. I've never smoked a day in my life, and I can't breathe around cigarette smoke. But my granddad with dementia, who is bedridden, now lives with me, and he has been a smoker his whole entire life. He could smoke a couple of packs a day, but then he was also able to quit smoking and go for days, even months, or a couple of years without smoking, and then, just put him down like nothing and not pick him back up. And then a year later, oh, I'm going to smoke. He decides to pick him back up and start smoking again. Almost like he's never been addicted to them. But cigarettes are addicting. I don't care who you are, or, regardless whether he's been able to lay them down and pick them back up. It is an addiction. It's a habit, even a habit addiction. Just having something in your hand, or, it's a habit addiction, plus it's also a tobacco addiction, just like any other drug, I think. So anyways, in our case, it's like he can smoke a cigarette, and then literally 5 seconds later, after smoking that cigarette, completely forgot he just smoked a cigarette, and I need a cigarette. Daddy, you just smoked a cigarette. No, I didn't. I need a cigarette. And you can't argue with him, and you can't reason with them, because they're like, it's like having an 89-year-old 3-year-old in your house. If any of you raise 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, imagine them being 100 years old. That's kind of what it's like. So I tried many different things, with the cigarettes. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to buy a fake cigarette. He has smoked so often that, some days a fake cigarette, will work. He has no clue it's fake, and he'll just sit there and smoke it like it's real, no clue idea. I haven't bought a fake cigarette yet, but if I did, that's how it would be. And then some days, he's going to absolutely know that's not a real cigarette, and he's going to know that that's a fake cigarette and want a real cigarette. So, yes, I could buy the fake cigarettes, and some days that they would work, and then some days I know they wouldn't work. For instance, when I give my granddad a cigarette, I go in his room, I open up the window, light a cigarette, and shut his door so that the rest of the house doesn't smell like cigarette smoke. And I cannot breathe around cigarette smoke, so I always shut his door. And then as soon as he gets through smoking, about 5 minutes later, I will go in there and I will open his door. And I promise you, I open that door and he's like, oh, I'm glad you're here. I need a cigarette. Dada, you just smoked a cigarette. No, I didn't. Dada, I'm just now opening your door because I just gave you a cigarette a few minutes ago. You just smoked your cigarette. No, I didn't. I need a cigarette. That's how fast they can forget. Or I give him a cigarette, light a cigarette, open his window, shut his bedroom door, and 1 second later he's dropping a cigarette. That's one thing he does. He's always dropping his cigarette. And so I go in there to give him his cigarette, and he either will not take the cigarette when I'm trying to hand it to him because he can't comprehend that I'm handing him his cigarette, or he takes the cigarette and then he's fine. So I'm coughing and I'm hacking because I can't breathe. I'm leaving the room. I'm shutting the door and stuff. And the issue with that is that some mornings he would just be so agitated when he wakes up because he's hurting and he's agitated, and all he wants is his cigarette. And so a lot of y'all are probably thinking, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Give him a cigarette. The thing is, he can be poopy. Remember the poopy story I told you? He can be poopy. He can be soaked, because that's another story we can talk about another day. But his shirt can be wet, his britches can be wet, his bed can be wet, and He'll wake up in the morning and all he wants is that dang cigarette. He don't care about whether he's wet because he doesn't realize he's wet. He doesn't know his sheets are soaked. He doesn't know his shirt is wet. Daddy, you're wet. We need to get you changed. No, I'm not. Leave me alone. Just give me a cigarette. So he got to the point to where he was just so agitated and to where it was like every single morning and all he wanted was that dang cigarette, and it didn't matter if he had poop all over him or pee all over him, and he just wanted that dang cigarette. Oh, I couldn't take it anymore. So I stopped that and I told him, you can have a cigarette after breakfast, after we get you cleaned up. But then he would just, some mornings he would still, when I first started that, he would just still be so agitated and angry. He wouldn't let me change him. He wouldn't cooperate. He wouldn't, I'd have to roll him side to side to get his sheets changed and everything. And he wouldn't even cooperate with me so that I could do that. Or if I got him changed and I got him cleaned up and we went through our morning routine, and then I would come in here and then give him a cigarette and let him smoke after that, and then come in here to fix breakfast while he was smoking. Well, one of his favorite breakfast meals was pancakes. So I would have a couple of pancakes on the griddle, and my granddad would be in there smoking and drop his cigarette. Patty, he's just yelling for me, Patty, Patty, until I go in there. And he will not stop yelling until I go in there because he has no patience. And he will yell till I go in there and get a cigarette picked up and hand it to him. So then I'm hacking and I'm coughing, and I've had 3 kids, so my bladder's not what it used to be. So I'm hacking and coughing because I had to pick up a cigarette, and he's not taking the cigarette because he can't realize I'm trying to hand him something. Finally, he takes a cigarette. I go out of the room, hacking and coughing, shut his door back. I've got pee all over me. Come back in here and the pancakes are burnt. So I had to start another batch of fresh pancakes. So I had to do something that worked for me. So he does not get a cigarette until after he eats breakfast. And if he decides not to cooperate with me in the morning, and he doesn't get a cigarette. So, and it sounds mean almost if you look at it that way, and it sounds hateful or that I'm denying him his cigarette, but I'm not. I have to keep myself sane. And if I just let him smoke whenever he wants and whenever he feels like, I'm going to go insane, and he's going to run out of cigarettes, which he has before. And since I don't ever get out of the house, but maybe once a week, if he runs out of cigarettes before that day comes that I can get out of the house to go get him somewhere, then he's just going to, every time he hears a door open, is that my cigarettes? You got my cigarettes? Somebody gonna go get my cigarettes? And he will ask every 30 minutes for a cigarette, like clockwork. I need a cigarette. I need a cigarette. So, there's reasons for my madness. So he is on a schedule with his cigarettes. He gets one after breakfast, and he gets one after lunchtime, and he gets one if he like a snack. If it's a bath day and the aide comes to give him a bath, I will give him one after he has a bath. Or if he's hurting and I have to give him a pain pill, he gets one like every 4 hours, but he has to have a snack with his pain pill. And if he hasn't eaten, lunch or dinner yet, and he needs that, it's time to give him that pain pill, or I give it to him an hour early or 30 minutes early, then I give him a snack with it, and then I let him have a cigarette. And he has one, after dinner and in the evening time before he goes to bed at night. Some days I am more lenient with him, and give him one more often. But I've soon realizing that on days I am lenient, it's like he remembers that I was lenient with him. And so then he goes right back into that transition. Give me a cigarette. Where he doesn't realize he's wet. He doesn't realize he's dirty. He doesn't realize he just smoked one or something. He just wants a dang cigarette. And he goes right back into that agitation mode in the mornings to where he won't let me mess with him, won't let me change him because he just wants a cigarette. So I have to pick my battles, and this battle I choose to pick, because it's either be lenient with him and just let him smoke all the time and lose my sanity, or do this. And another thing, he can't remember if he just smoked a cigarette. There's literally been times where I know it only takes him 2 or 3 minutes to smoke that cigarette, and I give him a cigarette and shut his door, and then I go back in there like 3 minutes later, and he's like, I need a cigarette. Has no clue he just smoked one. None. And there is no reasoning with the man. And he has no patience. But I love him. He did raise me. My granddad raised me. And I had the best childhood anybody in the world could ever ask for. But this is a very, very difficult job, caring for him. Some days he's there, and some days it's like, I don't know who this man is. Caregiving for a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's is a very difficult job, and you definitely need a support group. So join one if you're a caregiver and you haven't. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I hope y'all enjoyed my video. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.